Hello, and welcome to another adventure on the Can Do podcast. I'm your host, Jothy Rosenberg, aka the Incorrigible Entrepreneur. A professor turned entrepreneur and founder of 9 companies. On this show, I talk with business leaders and personal achievers. Adventures on the Can Do explores the challenges and rewards of entrepreneurship, overcoming adversity, and where grit and perseverance can get you. Be inspired by others and push yourself along your path to success and fulfillment. My forthcoming book, Think Like a Startup Founder, based on my experiences, both good and bad, seeks to help early-stage startup founders avoid the oh-so-many pitfalls founders can experience along the way. Adventures on the Can Do adds to that the stories of many other founders, each with an amazing story and set of lessons learned that will be valuable to listeners. Before we jump into today's episode, just a reminder of how you can support this podcast. You can go to my website, jothyrosenberg.com, and sign up for my newsletter, and there you can see other episodes of this podcast. Also, please follow and rate us at podchaser.com, Adventures on the Can Do. And with that behind us, let me introduce today's guest, Mary Voss. Mary specializes in fostering and leading work environment through inclusion and diversity initiatives and practices. She is currently VP of Human Resources and Talent Acquisition at Trivium Corporate Solutions. Mary's practice is an unusual blend of hitting the bullseye target with the right talent at the right time, while strategically focusing on assessing for the human behavioral characteristics to improve a company's culture. Mary has placed senior-level diversity talent in many leading companies as well as emerging companies, including Google, Genentech, Netflix, Synopsys, Wells Fargo, Juniper Communications, Cisco, Intuit, NVIDIA, Cadence, KLA Tencor, and 400-plus others. Mary has a history of helping companies diversify their corporate boards and their leadership teams. Mary led the internal global talent acquisitions function at EMC for all West Coast divisions, delivering the talent needed to grow beyond the $6 billion annual revenue rate within 3 dynamic, varied business units. Mary led the internal talent acquisition function at Marketo, a SaaS company. She was also a leader in developing and implementing integrated and strategic initiatives for inclusion and diversity at EMC, Marketo, and Uhana, which dramatically changed the landscape, mindset, and decision-making practices. Mary has passionately developed and driven inclusion and diversity initiatives that were critical components of building thriving organizational cultures at all of those companies mentioned. Mary has been an advisor to many leaders in the technology and fintech worlds, which naturally occurred as she built Foxhunt, a staffing firm that she built up to a $30 million annual run rate within 5 years, and continued to lead for 17 years. And here's Mary Voss. So we go back, as I said, we go back quite a ways, and it was my first startup, and I had been there just a short amount of time before you joined. You joined in the HR group, and they were going to be doing a bunch of hiring, so that was a good start for you as well. And I want us to just kind of tell a little story, a fun story that happened back then. So there was an attempt to, flip what normally happens, which of course would be a really, bad HR event. And see if we could make it funny that it was going to be turned around and it was going to be guys having themselves be objectified. We all thought it was kind of funny, except what? Well, I know you would not do it now at all, but we can look back on it and we can say, all right, given that those times were different, it was a lot of fun. And I just want to set the stage because we had a vice president who it might have even been his idea. What he wanted to do, I think he thought he had really nice legs, He wore shorts all the time. And he thought, wouldn't it be funny if we had a legs contest where it's only open to guys to participate, and the women of the organization, a few of them anyway, were going to be sitting in an office judging, and they couldn't see from like I don't know, mid thigh, or maybe it was even knees up. They couldn't see who it was, so they were judging strictly by one guy after another walked by, and then you would judge, and what he did was he tried to promote a bribe by he taped some dollars or something to his legs, and so he then thought he would win. I of course was wearing shorts, and I of course was wearing my prosthetic leg, and I thought, okay, well, I'm going to show him, and so I stapled the money to my prosthetic leg, and of course the staples go right in because back then it was made out of wood. And so I walked by, and I did win, and it actually made him mad.
Oh. Well, the first time I met you and I was sitting in your office talking to you, you stapled a paper to your leg, and I like freaked out. I was like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" and you thought it was the funniest thing, and I was like, I had no idea. So,
did I do it through my pants leg?
Yeah, it was my first day there. Yeah.
Your first day. That's really what I should wait at least for a couple days, I think. Yeah. So we had some fun. I mean, the point of that story is just that we you have to have fun, especially when you're working that hard and all that. And yeah, we didn't know some of the things that we now know, or we're just much more aware, and so you wouldn't do that now, but it was fun. It was fun. So, all right, getting back to the more serious stuff. So how do you determine who to hire when, in terms of the value they're going to bring, or their values with respect to the organization, what kind of value they're going to bring?
So I think looking at people's technical background and what they bring value on that side is the easiest thing to ascertain, because they either know what they need to know for the job or they don't. What you can't do is go back and be the person's parents who raised this person and imparted certain values into an individual. So looking at motivation and the ability to learn and the softer skills and how they're going to fit in with the team that's already on board, and really understanding where the company's going. So you have to know how fast a company is scaling. If they're scaling really fast and you need to have the skills that you're looking for 18 to 2 years ahead of where you are right now, those skills, looking at how somebody's going to scale over the next 18 to 2 years, and especially when you're talking about startups, really ascertaining, can the individual sprint faster than the growth of the company so that they can, one, stay interested in what they're doing so that they don't get left behind, but two, also to provide the leadership and the long-term history that's going to be important as you're hiring all these other people. When I started at Sun, every 6 months, we had doubled the company. And pretty soon, when you are turning, somebody new is on board and they're turning to somebody else to get help with something that they don't know how a process works, and then they find out that everybody is new, that's a hard thing to deal with when you're really growing quickly. So making sure that people can absorb the information, and there's a lot of ways to do that. People companies, especially small companies, don't really put together a really good recruiting strategy, really, to say, okay, this is what we're looking for today, but this is the skills that we need to bring along with us over the next 2 years in this hire. And so here's your technical things that you're looking for, but what are the softer skills, and really having different interviewers focus in on those areas so that it's an interesting interview for the person, but you're getting new information in every single interview session instead of having the person tell you about themselves over and over again. Tell me about yourself. And, it's like the same story. So how you know if somebody's the right person to hire? Did they engage well with the people on your team? And the sooner you get that nailed down, the better, because now your team is a more cohesive team that's evaluating new talent coming in, as opposed to having outliers who don't recognize the same cultural values as other people on the team. So it's imperative that you get that nailed down in the first 10 hires that you make.
Well, you mentioned the sort of the interview experience.
Yeah.
And I think probably most people, the majority of people these days, have heard of behavioral interviewing, and most people know it's important. But I still find that a lot of people don't actually know how to do it. Do you want to say a little bit about how you think about behavioral interviewing?
Sure. So one of the things that you're trying to do is find out, based on past history or the way somebody thinks, what will be important to you in the job that somebody's coming into. For instance, when I want to know what somebody values in the environment that they work in or the people that they work with, I will ask them, to think of a company that they worked for before, where there's somebody that they admired their work style, and have them describe that person to me. And from that, I can tell what they value in the people that they work with. Instead of saying, what do you value in the people they work with? And then they're stumped and they're going, well, I value people that are trustworthy. But if you ask them, what's, somebody that you admire, describe their work style, they'll really go into a lot of detail because they're thinking of somebody, and you really get some insight into how they think and what they care about and what they value. That's just an example. So there's a million ways to go at different things that you're trying to ascertain in the process.
Well, here's one, because I end up interviewing a lot of engineers. I'll ask them, tell me about one of your favorite pieces of code you've ever written, and why, and then and tell me about a program or a feature you were working on that was really bad, it was a disaster, and why was that? Because the way I think about it is, the whole process of interviewing is completely fake. What I mean is, it's nothing like where the job that they're gonna do. And so, I'm sorry?
It's like a first date.
Exactly. It's not really how married life is going to feel, is it? Right. So the idea is, okay, so in a perfect world, we would still be doing apprenticeships, and you would have somebody that would come in and be an apprentice, and then they would learn, and you would see how they were, and you might say, oh, after 6 months, that apprenticeship, that's over. You didn't work out, or they did, but you can't do that, or not in most jobs. So you need to get them telling stories about what their work is like, and And the other thing is that behavioral interviewing gets you, this is why I thought of this, is that it gets you out of, you're not asking questions off the resume. You've already got the resume. And unless they've been fraudulent, there's nothing more you need to do. But it does give you a chance to say, hey, at this company, what was the most fun thing you did outside of the normal, function of your job? So you get a chance to see what they like. And the other thing is of course, the thing you were saying about, don't everybody ask the same thing. You have roles, you agree on who's going to do what. And then anybody can use the resume as, oh, well, how did whatever it is that they're supposed to ask, how did that play out at that particular, company?
Yeah, a resume is a tool. It's a tool to get people in or out of the interview process. And then from there, it's a launching tool to say, what's important on here that I want to dive into?
I had an interesting experience. I was actually looking for an opportunity for where I could take Dover before I knew we could incubate it at Draper. But the only way I could explore Amazon being a place for that was to go interview there. And so I show up in Seattle for the interview, and they show me into this tiny conference room that could hold 4 people if you squeeze. And they plunked me down, and I was going to spend the next 6 hours not leaving that room except to go to the bathroom. And then somebody would come in, they would open their laptop, and frequently they would open it up such that I couldn't see them and they couldn't see me. And they were looking at questions, and they were asking them, and they were typing my answers, and then they'd go on to the next one. I mean, I think they talk about their processes and whatnot as if they're really proud of them, but boy, that's the worst I've ever seen.
That's very distracting to have somebody typing, and they're still typing your last answer, but they've asked you something else, and they're not really listening. So, and you're trying to help them, and you slow down your process of talking to them. Yeah, it's they're not making a connection. They don't know. They're not looking you in the eye. They aren't looking at your body language. Body language says a lot in an interview process.
Yeah. So you've done hiring for all kinds of companies. There's many cases where you've basically built the heart and soul of that company. Maybe talk about a few of the companies that you've done that for.
Oh, gosh. Okay. So, I had a company, Fox Hunt Staffing, for 17 years. I ran the company, and we had a lot of startups, and we had a lot of larger companies too. But, Synopsys is one where a lot of the leadership team back in the day, I was responsible for helping bring in. There's been a ton of them. So right now I work for a company called Trivium Corporate Solutions, and I have a handful of clients. And so I have a pharma client that I am working with, and that was a new technology for me to learn. And I'm still learning, and they're based in Massachusetts, and it's called I2O Bio. And I've only helped bring in a couple of people there. Another one, but they're a tiny company, so a couple of people makes a difference. Mm-hmm. There's a handful of companies. I hate to go into all of them. Cisco, back in the day, we opened up Latin America for them. Just a whole lot and built their marketing team. And so the EDA industry, the networking industry, I mean, even Google back in the early days. So
you could probably drive down 101 and just constantly be pointing out companies that you helped build.
Recently, not I was down in the Bay for something, and I was driving on like First Street, and I was like thinking, oh yeah, these guys, all these people that I had worked with in the past and helped them build their companies.
So I've had recruiters and various staffing help in the over the years, and we keep coming back to together on various companies. There's a process that you do, which I've observed many times, and it's very different from what anyone else does. You could probably patent it if you just described it to the patent office. So here's what I see. You'll sit down with the hiring manager, and you're trying to get a real sense with as much depth as possible of what they want, and you're gonna have to correct me what I got wrong. But then you go and start doing some outreach to all your super secret sources and then you'll come back with a list of names. You do a process where you kind of filter them based on, you'll look at information you can get on them, resumes and whatnot, and then you'll come back with a short list, and you'll go through this with the hiring manager, who never gets. I mean, it's almost impossible as the hiring manager to write a job spec and have it be, stand up in the face of real interactions, and so then they'll say, oh no, I didn't mean that, and I forgot to say this. So there's some tuning going on, and then there's another part where you are actually doing the screening, and you'll eliminate people, or you'll come back with more questions. And so by the time you've got a list of 5, you'll say, okay, hiring manager, you do a phone screen on these 5. And are we giving away too much information to your competitors?
Well, anybody could do this. Anybody could do it. But anybody who knows what they're doing could do this. But I also put my own filter on top of whatever I have been told. And I ask myself, if I were the CEO of this company, what do I need in this person? And then I have another filter that is, would I be proud of this person if they were my child? Because you don't want to bring a jerk into the company. And so I ended up with that filter on top of it, because there's some people that are really good at their job, at the actual technical piece of their job, that nobody wants to work with, that are just impossible. So you have a star that has now negated 5 other people on your team, and that's not somebody you want in your own company. So back when I had my company, there was, I've met some leaders that I could not, with a clean heart, actually recruit people for. That in the meeting, when I'm first meeting them, whether we're going to work together or not, I know I'm not going to work with them, because I'm not going to convince somebody to leave the job and tell them this is a better job when I think that the leader is somebody that I absolutely wouldn't want to work with. And I found myself in one of the meetings, actually, I stood up and took my keys out of my purse, ready to go, before I realized that I had I had terminated the meeting without even thinking about it. It was just no way is anybody going to work with this CEO. No way. So anyway, so I care about people. So I think one of the things that's, if you're the hiring manager working with you, you make it, it's never an easy task, but you make it really as easy as possible, because there's this iterative thing that's going on,
and you keep using the interactions with the hiring manager and the sort of group of people you've initially found to keep improving your filter, and by the time you're kind of honing in on a list of people to actually be interviewed, you've really narrowed the field down to just a good group of people. In fact, sometimes it's hard then for the hiring manager to choose, because they just suddenly, now they're looking at 3 highly qualified people.
Well, sometimes people aren't ready to make that hire so I did realize there was a cadence to some people some hiring managers that I've worked with, that they wouldn't hire the first person you sent in, even if the first person was dead on perfect. And so I would hold that person to be the third person going in or whatever. And I remember when I was talking to the team at Packeteer, and this is a company that has been acquired through a couple of other companies. And I remember asking the CEO, if I give you this VP of engineering, if I give you the best candidate first, are you going to hire him? And it was like, oh yeah, absolutely. But it took 4 candidates, but I still think that the first candidate was the best one. So, because we replaced that guy 2 years later. Well,
so another question that I've been dying to ask you is, well, I wrote something in my book about why I think experience is so important in the early days of a startup. But I'd love to ask you why you think experience is so important, and that you really, in the earliest days, in my experience, and I think you feel the same way, but I'm not sure, that you really don't want people that have no experience.
Yeah, for the most part. It depends on the job that you're hiring them into. There's some people that are perfect, as far like a new grad that is very smart and is perfect as far as a fit goes, and you can see that you'd be silly not to hire them because somebody else is going to get a gem. But those are like 1 in 500. I mean, that doesn't happen very often. Experienced people have seen enough to make good decisions moving forward. You don't want people to always say, hey, we did it like this at my last company, because your last company isn't this company. But you want them to be able to take all those factors and figure out what the best decision is for the path moving forward. And time is so critical in a startup. I mean, market share and running after it and making sure that you're the company that gets out there first and saturates the marketplace. That's going to happen with people who are experienced.
Yeah. What I find is, so I have this adage or philosophy that I try to follow, and that is hire no strangers in the first 25 people. And the way I do it is I'm trying to hire people that I know, and then I'm leaning on, and they're not a stranger if somebody I really trust tells me, like, for example, one of our favorite people, both of yours and mine, is Marco, who was the VP of engineering at Dover. Marco was somebody I really trusted, said, you're going to love this guy. You need to hire this guy. And we met, and I did. And he was, phenomenal. He was a superstar. So, and then from then on, everyone that he knows really well and wants to bring in is not a stranger. And we did. By the time we ended up, getting to 18 people, we had, I think, maybe 2 people out of that whole batch were not, did not follow the rule.
It's good to tap your network and rely on other people that you trust, but there's a lot of good talent out there too. that you bring in, and then there's somebody, then that person becomes part of your network.
Yeah. Well, we got there eventually, but and maybe it's not 25, maybe it's but it's thinking about it that way, because it's related to the experience thing. What you want is a very, very efficient group of people. And the way for there to be efficiency is trust. If people trust each other, then, okay, this person's good at their job. They're going to do their job. I trust them. And then when they make a decision, great. You don't have to second guess it. Everybody can just move on based on them, sort of having this area that they own, and they've made a decision. And it's so important for there to be this kind of efficiency and a friend of mine who's a CEO says she values the power of saying yes, that she wants to say yes to people, and because she trusts them, she says yes, and then they're like, wow, that's wonderful. It made me feel great to have the CEO say yes to my ideas, to my new suggested thing,
Yeah, I think for the most part, well, trust is absolutely essential, but sometimes you have to hire outside of your network and take the leap of faith and get to the point of trusting somebody sooner than later, even if it backfires. And it's kind of fast to fail. It's trust. I believe that, but I also don't think that unless you know what the market looks like, what the pool looks like, and the people that you're bringing in, that trust is more important than something else. That a technical set or something that somebody's done, the experience that they've had that's taken a company very quickly through something else. I mean, it's a balance. That's a hiring decision that leaders make.
Did I ever tell you my philosophy of the bozo bit? I think I've talked to you about the bozo.
Well, yes. And so that's what I was thinking of that earlier when I was talking about something. Yeah, we don't yet, because Apple, that was Apple. This like hire no bozos. Yeah.
Well, so we had to actually exercise this philosophy once recently, and it was that so the idea of the bozo bit is, if someone doesn't work out, because hiring is so hard, interviewing is so hard, that you will make mistakes no matter how many times you've done it in your career. And so there was someone that had made it through all the filters we could have possibly had, and they came through, and then they weren't working out. And so what I espouse is that small company, we're gonna make decisions quickly, and we operate. And I know you've said this before too: hire slowly and fire quickly. And the bozo bit is is firing really quickly. So the team, one or two people on the team, come to me and say, so and so's just not working out. I say, what's going on? And they'll explain it. And these are people I trust. Okay, so they're not going to do this on a whim. And I'll do a little bit of digging, but not much. Just making sure that this is like something that needs to happen quickly. And then I will not leave it to anyone else. I will not delegate it. I will go to the person and say, listen, I need to talk to you. And I'll talk to them and say, so it's not working out. I'm going to have you leave now. And they automatically get like whatever is reasonable, 2 or 3 weeks severance. And what happens is the whole team is energized by the fact that they were listened to, that they are trusted, and that this person was actually slowing things down because they were all obsessing over. By the time they come to you, it's been a while, They don't do this on one day or 1 week of issues. It's like been a month or 2 months of steady decline in everyone's productivity.
I'm part of this on a regular basis with all of my client companies and have been part of this through my career. But it's never easy to let somebody go. However, if that individual is causing other people to throw more work on their back or has such a negative impact on the team that they're working in, you're actually doing not just the company, but individuals on the team a favor to move somebody out who is not the right fit. If somebody's not the right fit technically for a job, but people really like them and there's another place for them, that's great. But a lot of times, like you say, it takes a little bit of time before people actually complain about an individual, and sometimes you see it yourself. It's not even people complaining. It's somebody that's not performing and doesn't really have any interest in performing. So going through a performance improvement plan, you'll see people sometimes, get through the plan and do well, and then a couple weeks later, you're hitting that again. So it's the right thing sometimes for that individual who's being exited out of the company. Also, it gives them a chance to find a place that is the right fit for them.
You've worked at some big companies, like you worked at EMC for a long time, and you've worked at the tiniest startups. Which do you like better?
I like the tiny startups better, or not just tiny. I like the smaller to mid-sized companies because you have more impact in a short period of time, and being able to move things forward is fun for me. I like to be able to see how to create a path and bring people along on that path. And in a larger company, you have to think about which 45 people am I going to influence to get this done, and then work it through. But EMC was an enjoyable company to work for because I worked on the West Coast, and so it was with different organizations. So it was like multiple companies anyway. Each organization was a company that they either acquired, and in all of those companies were acquiring other companies. So it was almost like multiple smaller companies within the larger organization.
Mm-hmm. So, you have been through a lot in your career and in your life. And where do you think, and I think of you as having a fair amount of grit. You're tough. Where would you say it comes from?
Probably growing up with not a lot of money and knowing that I had to survive. And luckily, I got some good DNA, and putting that DNA together with the motivation to make people's lives good. I want my own life. I want every moment of my life to be fun and good, and I want that to be the same for others. And if I can help a company be successful, that's fun for me. I've always been independent, and having that mindset, these don't bother me when even when somebody has something personal to say to me that is negative, I try to either learn for it or I discount it if it doesn't fit in with the way I think, and keep going forward.
The world that's that swirls around you, it can be full of all kinds of issues and problems, and you just are like this quiet in the storm, this source of stability. I mean, I've seen it for your family, for where you work. It's just and you're always, upbeat, and no matter what. It's pretty amazing.
Well, I appreciate that. I think I got a really good dose of serotonin somehow in my physical being. I don't know. I just really believe that life is short and make the best of it.
Well, that's a wonderful note to sort of close on. That's a very nice closing point. I really want to thank you. I've been looking forward to having this episode with you, just because I'm with you that hiring, HR, and even the negative side, the firing and doing that right, are all really, really important, especially to these early stage companies, where every hire is a big deal.
Yeah. Well, to add one last thing, I think dignity is important. Dignity coming into a company and being accepted with open arms into a company, and dignity when you're being exited out of a company is important too. It's important to everybody, the people who are still in the company, the people that, that respect. And I've really enjoyed working with you over the years. I know that we've worked together in a couple of different capacities, and, it'll go on. And I'm going to watch you swim again sometime, and with the sharks. And
well, just so you know, next year, 2025, will be my 30th time doing the Alcatraz swim. So, and we're going to have everybody from my family will be there. So we should, do it then. Come down then.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Okay.
That's going to be a wrap for today, folks. Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of Adventures on the Can Do. Please share and like us on your social media channels. This is Jothy Rosenberg, and I'll be back with a new episode every Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Don't forget to check out the show notes for additional resources and links. Hasta la vista.